The sun had barely stretched across the street in Oshodi when the loud screech of tires shattered the silence. A black Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up in front of the weathered brown bungalow where 14-year-old Adanna stood barefoot at the doorstep, clutching a worn-out wrapper over her chest. Her eyes widened in disbelief. From the back seat of the luxury car, a tall man in a deep blue designer suit stepped out. He didn't glance at Adanna. He walked like a man who owned everything, proud, emotionless, cold. Then, she saw her. Her mother, Jennifer, her once soft-spoken, God-fearing mother, now wearing a sleek pink gown, golden earrings, high heels, and sunglasses that covered the emptiness in her eyes. She walked like a stranger into the house. No hug, no greeting, no explanation. Adanna rushed in after her. "Mummy, are you going somewhere?" she asked, trembling. Jennifer didn't answer. Instead, she pulled a large black traveling bag from under the bed, stuffed it with expensive clothes, her perfume, her gold-plated necklace that George gave her on their wedding anniversary. She even took the red lipstick she never wore before his death. "Mummy, why are you packing your things?" Adanna's voice cracked. "You said we'll be okay. You said we'll get through this together." Jennifer turned for the first time. Her lips moved slowly. "You'll survive," she said. Then, just like that, she walked out. Adanna followed her, barefoot, into the street. Her knees scraped the rough ground as she fell beside the car. "Mummy, please. Don't leave me. I'm your daughter. Daddy just died last month. I have no one else." But Jennifer didn't look back. The man opened the door for her, and she stepped in like she belonged in that world, leaving behind the daughter she once rocked to sleep, the girl who still cried at night for her father. As the Rolls-Royce rolled away, Adanna collapsed to the ground, screaming, "Mummy, please, don't go." But the only thing that answered her was silence. And that silence broke something in her. 2 months earlier, it all began the night George was murdered. Adanna remembered the sound of the knock 3 quick taps, followed by silence. Then chaos. The armed robbers stormed into their home with guns. Her father had just collected 50 million for completing a government road project. Only Jennifer and Adanna knew about the money. "Where is the money?" they shouted. George froze. He stood there, hands raised, chest heaving. "I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered. They didn't believe him, but something strange happened. Jennifer, who was supposed to be hiding in the bedroom, suddenly ran out with a bag. "Please, don't shoot. This is what you're looking for." She handed them the exact amount they came for. Adanna watched it happen. She was behind the curtain, holding her breath, heart racing. She saw it all. Then came the most shocking moment. One of the robbers turned to George and said, "You should have just given it to us earlier." Before anyone could scream, they pulled the trigger. George collapsed, his blood spilling across the white floor tiles. They left. Jennifer didn't cry. Not that night. Not even at the funeral. She just sat there, her face blank, like her heart had died long before George did. Then things changed quickly. She suddenly had money, more money than anyone expected. A new car, new clothes. She smiled again, but it was the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. She stopped sleeping at home. She was always traveling for business. Adanna never asked questions. She was too broken. Until the day the Rolls-Royce came, and her world broke a second time. 1 week after Jennifer left, Adanna sat under the Oshodi bridge, her school uniform faded and torn. The tray of sachet water balanced on her head as she weaved through traffic, begging passengers to buy. It was how she paid for her exams, how she ate, how she survived. People often looked at her with pity. No one knew she had once lived in a bungalow. No one knew her mother chose a billionaire over her. Sometimes she'd sit behind the bridge and cry, whispering to her dead father, "I miss you, Daddy. If you're watching me, I'm trying." She never told anyone what really happened. She only had one goal: finish school. Her dream? To become a doctor. To help people like her father who didn't get help on time. To fight for justice. To prove she wasn't broken. But destiny had a plan. By the time results came out, Adanna's name was on everyone's lips. She had scored the highest in the entire Lagos, stated despite being homeless. The government offered her a full scholarship to study medicine and surgery at the University of Ibadan. Her story made the news. "She's the girl who sells pure water under the bridge," people said. "She's brilliant. And she has no parents." People cheered, but inside her, the wound still bled. She didn't want fame. She wanted her father. She wanted answers. And fate was about to give her one. Because just before she left for university, an anonymous note slipped under her door. A single sentence. "The man your mother left you for is the same man who killed your father." Adanna's hand shook. Her mind screamed, and her heart whispered one word. "Williams." Adanna read the note again. Her hands trembled. "The man your mother left you for is the same man who killed your father." She blinked, hoping the words would change. They didn't. She turned the paper over. Nothing. No name, no address, no explanation. Just the truth, brutal, sharp, and soul-shattering. For a long time, she sat on her small wooden bench in the one-room apartment an old church member had given her to sleep in. Her heart thudded in her ears. Questions screamed in her mind. Why would Mummy do that? Was it true? Was she part of it all along? Her chest ached, not just from the betrayal but from the years she had tried to forgive her mother. Even after being left alone, even after begging and being ignored, she still hoped, deep down, that her mother had a reason. But this changed everything. 3 years later, Ibadan, Nigeria. Adanna stepped onto the graduation stage, her white medical robe pressed neatly over her petite frame. The auditorium thundered with applause. Best graduating student, College of Medicine, Adanna George. She smiled, but not because of the cameras or flashing lights. No, she smiled because she had survived. She had gone from selling sachet water under Oshodi Bridge to earning the best result in medicine and surgery. Somewhere in the crowd, a lecturer whispered to another, "That girl is a miracle." But Adanna didn't feel like one, because behind her soft smile was a mind that remembered everything. The blood, the silence, the betrayal, and the note that never left her purse. 6 months later, Lagos. Adanna stood in front of a sleek white building in Victoria Island, the corporate headquarters of Luxoil International, one of the biggest oil and gas firms in Nigeria. She had been hired as a resident doctor for their in-house medical team. Her office was on the 10th floor. Her life was finally stable. She had money now, respect, influence. But still, every time she looked in the mirror, she saw that 14-year-old girl crying in the dust. She hadn't seen her mother in years. Until one rainy evening, the elevator doors slid open. Adanna stepped out into the hospital wing, flipping through patient charts. But what she saw next made her freeze. At the far end of the hallway sat a woman on a bench soaked, barefoot, holding a torn nylon bag. Her face was thinner, her hair uncombed, her eyes empty. Adanna's heart skipped. It was Jennifer, her mother. The same woman who had stepped into a Rolls-Royce and never looked back, was now sitting in a hospital like a beggar. She rose slowly, as if embarrassed. "Adanna." Adanna blinked, unsure if she was dreaming. "Mummy?" Jennifer's lips quivered. "Two. Didn't know where else to go. I've been looking for you." Adanna clenched her jaw. "Why?" Jennifer tried to walk closer, but Adanna raised a hand. "Please, stay right there." The hallway went quiet except for the sound of the rain hitting the windows. Jennifer's voice cracked. "Williams? He threw me out." Adanna stared, emotionless. Jennifer continued, wiping her tears. "He said I was too dangerous. That if I could help kill my husband, I could also kill him. He took everything, my business, my accounts, everything." Adanna flinched. So, the note was true. She had helped them kill George, her father, her only light. "You helped them," Adanna whispered, her voice shaking. "You handed them the money. You watched them kill Daddy." Jennifer broke down in tears. "I didn't know they'd kill him. I thought they would just take the money and leave." Adanna stepped back, her eyes dark with pain. "You didn't cry at the funeral. You didn't even hold me when I screamed every night. You ran off with the man who destroyed our family." I thought I was securing a future for both of us, Jennifer wept. He promised me, he said we'd be safe. He said your father was reckless with money and that he would ruin us. Adanna's voice rose. So your solution was to help him get killed? Jennifer sobbed, falling to her knees. I was stupid. I was greedy. And I've paid the price. I lost everything. No one speaks to me anymore. Everyone hates me. Adanna stared at her mother now, a shadow of herself. I don't hate you, Adanna said quietly. Jennifer looked up, hope in her eyes. But I'll never love you the same way again, Adanna finished. If you want to apologize, start by bringing my father back to life. Jennifer gasped. You stole my only parent. You left me in the dust to chase a lie. And now you want forgiveness like it's a gift I owe you? Jennifer was silent. Her tears spoke louder than words. I will give you money, Adanna said, turning. To eat, to start a small trade. But that's all. I don't want anything else to do with you. That night, Jennifer sat in her one-room apartment, the money Adanna gave her sealed in a white envelope on the floor. She didn't touch it. She just stared at the wall, her eyes red, her face hollow. She picked up a photo from the drawer. It was old, faded, a younger George, smiling, holding baby Adanna. She pressed it to her chest and cried like a wounded child. She cried not because she was broke, but because she finally realized what true wealth was, and she had thrown it away. The news came like thunder on a sunny day. One of the biggest government hospitals in Abuja had just signed a 5-year partnership with Luxoil International. And as the company's top medical consultant, Dr. Adanna George was assigned as the lead coordinator for the project. It was a dream assignment, the kind her father would have proudly danced to, carrying her on his shoulders and shouting, "My daughter is now a big woman." But now, all she had was the memory of that laugh, and the face of the man who destroyed it. A strange file lands on her desk. One evening, as Adanna organized patient reports on her desk, her assistant, Mr. Tunji, walked in with a sealed brown file. "Madam, this came from the procurement office. It's marked confidential," he said. Adanna frowned. "From procurement? Why?" Tunji shrugged. "It's about the past oil field tenders, I think." Adanna opened the file. Inside were scanned documents of a bidding war from 6 years ago, contracts, emails, government evaluations, and signatures. One signature made her heart stop. George Ikenna, her father. He had submitted a final bid to the federal ministry just a week before his death, a $3 billion contract to build and manage an oil storage facility. She flipped through the pages. Then she saw the second bid. Williams Oil, Gas Limited. Same project, same week. Signed by Chief Williams, Uzothman her mother left her for. The man who later won the bid after her father was killed. She swallowed hard. And then her eyes caught a third pageant unsigned typed memo that said, "Ensure Mr. Ikenna George is no longer in the picture before the 30th. The contract must not go his way." No name. No stamp. But it was sent from an email tagged, "Jenny, boss at..." Adanna dropped the file. Her knees felt weak. Suddenly, her mind began to connect the dots. That night, the armed robbers, the exact knowledge of the money, her mother's cold behavior, the sudden wealth, and now this. Proof. She had helped set up her own husband, and not just for love, but for money. It wasn't just betrayal. It was murder. And the worst part? Adanna had spent years blaming herself for not doing anything to stop it. Adanna's hand shook as she dialed the number she had erased so many times. It rang once, twice. Then, "Hello?" Jennifer's voice was low, weak, old. Adanna took a deep breath. "Did you know about the contract?" Silence. Adanna's tone hardened. "Answer me. Was that why he was killed?" Jennifer exhaled shakily. "Yes." Adanna felt like the room was spinning. Jennifer continued, her voice trembling. "George got the contract. I saw the letter before he did. Too panicked. Williams had promised me so much. And when he heard about it, he said if George didn't back out, he'd make him disappear." "And you helped him?" Adanna shouted through clenched teeth. "I didn't think they'd kill him. I only told them where he kept the documents and the money. I didn't think they'd..." You handed your husband over like trash, Adanna cut in. For what? A man in a Rolls Royce. Jennifer broke down into sobs. I regret it every day, she whispered. I can't sleep. I see him in my dreams, bleeding, calling for help. And I can't move. I can't even look at a photo of him without shaking. Adanna didn't speak. She let the silence weigh heavy. Then she said, You didn't just kill Daddy. You killed me too. She hung up. Weeks passed. Adanna immersed herself in her work. But one night, after closing from the hospital, she stopped by a nearby filling station to buy fuel. As she stepped out of her car, she heard a familiar voice yelling by the fence. I don't want your pity. I said, give me the balance or I'll scatter this place. It was a woman in faded ankara, barefoot, her wrapper torn at the edge, holding a bunch of cheap fruit. It was Jennifer, Adanna's own mother, fighting with a teenager, over 500. Adanna stood frozen. She hadn't seen her since the phone call. She didn't even recognize her at first. The woman looked like a ghost of who she once was. People had gathered, laughing, mocking. See this mad woman? She said she used to drive a jeep. She'd a craze. Who dash her jeep? Someone threw a sachet of water at her. Jennifer wiped her face and kept yelling. Adanna's heart broke. Not because she pitied her mother, but because this was what betrayal looked like in real life. Not in movies, not in books, but right here, broken, barefoot, and unwanted. Adanna walked away that day, but 2 days later, she sent an envelope through a private driver. Inside was $250, zero in cash, and a short note that read, This will help you start a new life. But don't ever call me again. You chose your path. Now, walk in it. Jennifer sat on the cold floor of her small room, holding the envelope like it was fire. She stared at her cracked mirror, her eyes swollen, her skin pale. She whispered, I had everything, and I lost it all. She picked up a framed photo of George she secretly kept all these years. The glass had cracked long ago, but she never replaced it. She kissed it softly, and then she broke into uncontrollable tears. She wasn't crying for money, or for comfort. She cried for a soul she could never replace, a man she betrayed, and a daughter she would never truly have again. The headlines were everywhere. Young doctor, Adanna George, appointed as Federal Medical Consultant for Oil, Gas Sector Reform. From pure water seller to powerhouse, the rise of a girl who beat the odds. She had become a national symbol of resilience. But behind the cameras, Adanna was a woman on a mission not just to save lives, but to expose the truth that nearly destroyed hers. She had filed it quietly through a private legal firm, a full petition to the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, to investigate all contracts linked to her father's death, including Chief Williams Uzo. And what she discovered changed everything. 3 weeks later, a manila envelope arrived at her private office. It was marked, strictly confidential, and hand-delivered by someone who left without speaking. Inside were old photographs. One showed Chief Williams and a man in a black suit exchanging a brown briefcase. Another was a scanned birth certificate bearing the name of a child fathered by Williams with another woman before he met Jennifer. There was even a signed affidavit from the driver who had worked with Williams for 12 years. Adanna sat still as she read. Madam Jennifer didn't know Chief had another family abroad. He just used her to access insider information about Mr. George's contracts. When he got the government deal, he cut her off. So, it had all been a setup. Her mother was used to betray her own husband, then discarded like trash. Adanna didn't know whether to scream or cry, because this changed everything. She had returned home from a trip to find the locks changed. William stood at the gate, arms folded. Why is the house locked? She asked. I sold it, he replied coldly. What? You sold without telling me? Williams lit a cigar, ignoring her. I gave up my whole life for you, she shouted. And that's your fault, he said. You thought killing your husband would make me love you. I needed access to that contract. That's all. Jennifer's lips trembled. You said we were building a future. I already had one, with my real family, in London. Jennifer's knees buckled. Williams leaned closer. "If you had the heart to betray your husband, what makes you think I'd trust you?" Then he got into his car and drove off. And just like that, she became nothing. Adanna stared at the documents in her hand. She now had the final puzzle piece. Her father wasn't just killed because he was in the way. He was killed because someone he trusted slept beside him every night while plotting his downfall. And the man who orchestrated it was about to face the consequences. Adanna stood, took a deep breath, and called her lawyer. "File everything. I want him arrested. And I want a public statement. My father deserves that." 2 days later, it happened. Cameras rolled as Chief Williams Uzo, now bald and frail, was handcuffed in front of his mansion in Ikoyi. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, financial fraud, and contract manipulation," the EFCC agent announced. The media erupted. News outlets reported, "Oil tycoon falls from grace-tide to decade-old murder. Justice for George Ikenna. Daughter uncovers truth behind father's death." As Adanna watched the broadcast from her office, she didn't smile. There was no joy in watching justice unfold. Only peace, the kind of peace that came with truth. One evening, just after sunset, there was a knock at her door. She opened it slowly, unsure who to expect. It was Jennifer. This time, she didn't look like a beggar. She wore a simple, clean wrapper and held a Bible in one hand. "Adanna," she whispered. Adanna stood still. "Why are you here?" "I heard he was arrested." Adanna nodded. "Yes. I wanted to say thank you for helping me see what I truly became." Adanna folded her arms. "I didn't do it for you." Jennifer looked down. "I know." They stood in silence for a long moment. Then Jennifer said, "I've started attending counseling, and I volunteer at the Widows' Fellowship now, sweeping the floor, cleaning bathrooms." Adanna raised her brows. "Volunteering won't erase what you did." Jennifer nodded. "I know, but it's a start." She reached into her bag and pulled out an old photo. Adanna gasped. It was a picture of her father, and Jennifer, from her 5th birthday. She had never seen it before. "I kept this," Jennifer said, eyes filled with tears, "because it's the only moment I still believe I was a good mother." She handed it over and turned to leave. "Wait," Adanna called softly. Jennifer paused. "Why did you give them the money that night?" she asked, voice cracking. "Why not hide it, or fight for Dad?" Jennifer didn't turn back. She simply said, "Because I was afraid, and weak, and greed made me blind, and now I can't forgive myself either." Then she walked away, slowly, back into the night. Days turned into weeks. Jennifer became known at the local market, not for wealth or scandal, but for quiet humility. She cleaned stalls. She helped old women carry loads. She never spoke of her past unless someone asked. And when they did, she only said, "I once had everything, and lost it because I forgot what truly mattered." Sometimes, at night, she would sit in her small room, holding that photo of George and whisper, "I'm sorry." She knew Adanna would never come home again. She knew her sins would never be forgotten. But every tear she cried now was honest. Every prayer she whispered was real. And every child she smiled at, she saw her daughter in them. Years passed. The memory of George Ikenna became more than a name, it became a symbol. Schools across Lagos began to tell the story of a man who died for integrity and the daughter who fought for his justice. Dr. Adanna George, now in her late 20s, was no longer just a medical consultant. She had become a national advocate for transparency, launching a foundation named after her father, the George Ikenna Legacy Foundation, supporting orphans, widows, and victims of corruption. The mission was clear, to make sure no child suffers the way she did. But even as the world praised her, Adanna carried a wound no one could see. One cloudy Saturday morning, as she sorted letters at her desk, she found an envelope without a stamp or sender. Her hands paused. She opened it. Inside was a note, written in familiar, shaky handwriting. "I'm dying, Adanna, and I don't want to leave without saying this one last time. I am sorry. I wish I had been the mother you deserved. Not a day goes by that I don't pray for you and your father to forgive me. If not in this life, then maybe in the next. It was signed simply, Mum, Jennifer. Adanna's breath caught. Her fingers curled around the paper. A long silence filled the room. Then she slowly folded the letter and placed it inside her personal journal, right next to her father's contract copy and that old birthday photo. She didn't cry. She had already shed enough tears. The call came a week later. Hello, this is from St. Mary's Community Hospice. We have a patient named Jennifer George. She mentioned your name before she passed. Adanna didn't move. She stood still, the words echoing like whispers in a deep tunnel. Later that evening, she visited the hospice center as a daughter, but as a doctor and a witness to the final chapter of a broken soul. Jennifer lay peacefully in bed. Her face looked calm, almost free. On the table beside her was her Bible, a rosary, and the same photo of George and young Adanna. A nurse walked over. She asked us to give you this. It was a small box. Inside, a golden necklace with a single locket. Adanna opened it. On one side, her baby photo. On the other, a folded paper that read, No matter how dark my path became, you were always my light. Adanna closed her eyes, letting a deep breath settle the war in her chest. Months later, the George Ikenna Legacy Center for Justice and Public Health was launched in Abuja. It was a fusion of law, health, and social services, a place where victims could get free legal aid and medical support. During the opening ceremony, reporters gathered, cameras flashed, and dignitaries whispered in admiration. But Adanna didn't speak of fame. She stepped onto the stage, dressed in a simple white gown, her father's name pinned over her heart. She said only this, I am not a hero. I am not a savior. I'm simply the daughter of a man who did what was right, and a woman who lost her way. The crowd fell silent. Adanna's voice softened. Let this center be a place of healing, a place where children are never abandoned, and where justice, no matter how long it takes, always finds its way home. Tears filled the eyes of many, for it wasn't just her father's story anymore. It was Nigeria's story. Jennifer was buried in a small community cemetery in Oshodi, far from riches, but surrounded by quiet peace. Only a few attended. But one morning, a woman sweeping the grave found something odd. A small carved wooden cross, newly planted at the edge. Carved into it were two words, forgiven, forgotten. No one knew who placed it, but as the wind danced gently through the trees, one could almost hear the voice of a little girl, whispering across time, I forgive you, Mummy, but I will never forget. If you like this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.